Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, we are finally past the overreaction stage. I'm just kidding. We obviously have not seen too many games for all of these teams, but we are finally starting to shape a little bit of an understanding of some of these squads. Obviously, we have a very jam-packed show today. I'm going to kind of let you kind of detail more of exactly how we're going to approach this. But we have a lot of teams to break down today, and there are a lot of topics across the league that I think a lot of people are really intrigued about. A lot more surprises, too, that I think a lot of us expected even this early in the season.
100%. We're going to be going through some of the biggest stories of the league, and this is a lot on the basketball court because some teams have either overperformed, underperformed. We're going to get to all those as well, and also one of the biggest topics of this week as well, which is like a topic that kind of needs to be talked about, especially as us being media members as well here in the NBA community. So trying to like talk about that, those type of topics are important as well. So we're going to be getting into that. And of course, we have the quiz in the draft too. So, it's going to be a Hit Your Free Throw staple episode. It's going to be a great one. It's going to be an awesome episode. So make sure you're locked in, and we're going to be getting into it very shortly. But before we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow our individual accounts at TV on Basketball, at the Knockdown J, or the Routine Jumper. Those links will be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod members, make sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. You're going to see all the picks there. We're gonna get the picks are starting to roll through, man, and we have some really cool punishments at the end of each month, and of course we have a big one at the end there. In terms of the YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and all that good stuff. We really do appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Yeah, we have a pretty unorthodox topic to start off the pod, but like TV said, it's a talk of the NBA world right now.
100%. We're gonna go talk about those other teams soon. We've done a what do you call it, a segment like this in the past. But we're gonna get into that very shortly. But the first thing we're gonna talk about today, unfortunately, is off the court because Joel Embiid, the man who hasn't played a game in the NBA yet this season, has been suspended 3 games. Because of an altercation between him and Philadelphia journalist Marcus Hayes, in a situation where Marcus Hayes mentioned Joel Embiid's son and also his deceased brother in an article regarding his playtime and his availability that he's had so far this year. Here's an excerpt from that article. It's been edited since then, so if you find the article on his website on the Philadelphia Inquirer, you're not going to see this exact quote anymore. He's actually reworded it. But basically the excerpt before the edit was made was, Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son Arthur as a major inflection in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great, to leave a legacy for the boy named after his little brother, who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er. Well, in order to do great at your job, you first have to show up to work. Embiid has been great at just the opposite. Now in his 11th season, he's constantly been in poor condition. This poor conditioning apparently seems to have delayed his debut this season, as Embiid will not be playing in Wednesday's opener or the next 2 games. Jay, we, as someone who, as basketball fans, basketball enthusiasts, we like to talk about the game. I know that Embiid's injuries have been a topic of conversation. Honestly, for what, like 90% of his career that we've been talking basketball. So the fact that Marcus Hayes decided to put this comment out there and be ending up shoving him in the process, give your thoughts on the situation. Honestly, from this, when it comes to the suspension, in terms of NBA media in general, mention these sort of things, all that good stuff, I'm going to throw it over to you.
So as somebody who literally just graduated from college with a degree in journalism, not even a couple months ago, I can tell you that this kind of writing not only was completely unnecessary, but it actually does not bring any real value to the content that he's trying to create. That entire first line that he uses and the way that it transitions into his main point, which is basically focused around Joel Embiid's availability, he didn't necessarily need a heavy hitting topic like the passing of Joel Embiid's brother or the mentioning of his son in any way, shape, or form in order to convey his point that Joel Embiid has been very unavailable throughout his career. We have a very good understanding of Joel Embiid's lack of availability, dating back to the fact that he didn't even play his entire rookie season when he was drafted by Philadelphia. So I think the most unorthodox thing about it is that I don't necessarily understand the need for said word choice. I also think that just structurally, it didn't bring anything where the reader felt like they had a better understanding of the topic Marcus was trying to address, as if, like, in comparison to if he didn't use the line. Like, I don't think the line added any real necessary context that changes the dynamic of the kind of point that he's trying to make. And then of the actual suspension, TV, we both agree that this was one of those situations where it is you can't be surprised at what comes with writing certain things like this. I would also say that obviously at the end of the day, there was going to be some version of a suspension, just simply because you cannot normalize the idea of a player putting their hands on a journalist because they don't like something that the journalist said. Out of pocket or not, which granted, very out of pocket. Let's make sure we throw that out. Let's make sure we throw that out there. What Marcus Hayes put out on the Philadelphia Inquirer was out of pocket. But I would say at the same time, you cannot normalize the idea of putting your hands on a journalist simply out of the fact that somebody said something out of pocket. So I understand where Joel Embiid came from the perspective of not having the most positive reaction to seeing the dude once it came time to have that media, that press conference. But I would also say at the same time that, like, the league had to do something. And I think 3 games was like showing their understanding of, like, this meet in the middle of, like, look, what Buddy said wasn't right, but we also can't just be letting you do this. And so 3 felt like a safe way to put it. I think also somebody made a good point about this. I think it was somebody on the Dan Libertard show. He said, really the best way to phrase this in terms of, like, giving a better understanding of the impact is that Joel Embiid is getting $1 million fine. That's essentially what the equivalent of missing 3 games would be. In his case, is about $1 million fine. That probably hits as more of a headliner for Joel, because let's be honest, Joel's probably not going to play those 3 games to begin with. If we're being honest, right? Just based off the management of the back-to-backs and the fact that he hasn't even played a game yet anyway. So it's more of the financial burden of what comes with the suspension. All in all, because I do want to pass it back to you, this, I think, was the best that the league could have done given the overall context. And unless there's something else that's been undetailed so far, I think this is about as far as they could have went. And I also hope that Marcus Hayes treads lightly moving forward, because one thing that you don't want to do as a journalist is burn bridges. And it sounded like him and Joel Embiid didn't have the best of a relationship prior to this, and obviously it's only going to become more and more strained after this incident.
Yeah, this situation, look, I'm gonna start with the suspension. I think that the NBA have probably set a standard in terms of putting your hands on media members or being in this type of situation where 3 games is probably the standard, because you shouldn't be doing that, especially in the public eye, especially when you're in a media scrum like this, like Joel Embiid. But at the end of the day, like you mentioned, this was out of pocket. This didn't add anything to the context of Joel Embiid's availability. Yes, he hasn't been available. Yes, there's, like, we've had, like, conversations for years about this. But to bring in his son, to bring in his brother who died during his rookie season, and to say that trying to leave a legacy for them instead of, his legacy in the NBA, and him not fulfilling that as he was trying to insinuate there, was just completely out of pocket, completely unnecessary. And it's one of those things where I understand the reaction. The reaction was understandable. Joel Embiid has already voiced his frustrations about people, constantly talking about his lack of effort, maybe his effort to stay on the court, to stay healthy. Like, he's like fully, like, even told, like, NBA fans, like, look, I don't like it when people, like, say that, because I'm trying my best. I've gone through surgery after surgery just to get on the basketball court for you guys, and I feel like I'm getting disrespected. He understands the rhetoric around his um around his absences, but
Mm.
he understands that fans are talking about it more in an NBA sense, in a basketball sense. Bringing in personal life, bringing in his son and his brother, completely uncalled for. You're gonna have to expect a response like this. Obviously, shouldn't be putting your hands on media members. So again, the 3 games thing is a standard. But at the end of the day, this is completely unacceptable. And the fact that, I mean, we're not whether Marcus Hayes gets reprimanded or not, we're not gonna know. It's gonna be between him and the Philadelphia Inquirer, potentially him and the NBA, and it's gonna be behind closed doors. But at the end of the day, he shouldn't be talking about that. Joel Embiid's response was valid, but it did warrant a 3-game suspension at the end of the day. So I just hope that this is a lesson to not just um NBA people like they don't really touch media members anyway, so I don't think that's gonna be like they know they're not supposed to do that, but more of a lesson to journalists and to kind of like be weary of that line that you walk between personal life being on the basketball court, which the discussion should be on the basketball court at the end of the day. And I think Marcus Hayes, he said apologies, he said he understands what people are doing and that's why he removed it, but I hope that his situation is dealt with on the side, even though it's probably not going to be announced. Hopefully, he is also dealt with as well because he is as much to blame for the situation as Joel Embiid.
Completely agreed. I think where you ended is actually a very good way to kind of jump off the topic, because I do think that although the headline is going to be Joel Embiid is suspended for 3 games, I think the better understanding is that a Philadelphia journalist was moving out of pocket and put an NBA player in a position of discomfort in a way that journalists should not be able to. Like you mentioned beforehand, once it starts to leave the court. Now, again, there's things like, if a player gets a DUI or they end up in a court case that leads to jail time, right? Those are things where personal endeavors,
especially involving the person himself. You know what I mean?
Correct. Those are the kind of topics where then it also affects on the court play or lack thereof, right?
Yeah.
This was not necessarily one of those supporting details, and that's where you, again, like you said, go from necessarily speaking about what's happening on the floor or what's not happening on the floor, and taking a completely unnecessary route. I think that this article by Marcus Hayes could have been a very good think piece on the ineffectiveness of player injury management, given the fact that between Joel Embiid and like Kawhi Leonard, for example, load management has not proven to be more effective than simply trying to play all 82. I think that could have been a much better think piece rather than whatever it is that he was trying to make out of this initial lead to his story.
100%. And to be honest, I mean, we got to be completely honest. This is for shock factor. This is for making sure that people, oh, what does this have to do with this? Oh, it's just about him being on the basketball court. That's kind of effed up. But I mean, like, he did it for shock factor, and it didn't work. This is why the line you have to do. You're trying to be edgy and all that. This is the type of line that he was trying to cross, and he crossed way past it. So hopefully, again, reprimand. There's like reprimandations for him as well. But at least for Joel Embiid, at the end of the suspension, it's looking like he's going to play his first game of the season, which is this Tuesday against the New York Knicks, in the first game of the NBA Cup. So we're going to get Joel Embiid back soon, which is also very good to see. So, yeah, interesting. Definitely a tough situation. Just be careful what you write, guys. Just be careful what you write. 100%. Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to the next topic of the show. And if you've been a listener of the HYFT podcast, you have heard this segment before. It is called For Real or Facade. And basically what this segment is looking at some teams, a player, and determining whether what we're seeing on the basketball so far, is this something that's going to translate to the rest of the season? Is this for real, what we see from this team? Or is it something fake? Is it a facade that we see from these teams? We have some teams we're going to talk about. A lot of teams who are doing really well. A couple teams who are definitely underperforming. And we got players here as well. So we have a lot of things we're going to talk about. And a lot of these guys have been near the top of the headline. So you're going to want to hear us talk about these topics. So the first one, Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. Is this a for real or a facade? The start of the Golden State Warriors.
I think the Golden State Warriors are for real. I think the thing that most people are probably going to question is the current shooting splits for Buddy Hield so far this season. Buddy Hield is literally 0.1 points behind Steph Curry for leading this team in PPG so far this season.
Yes.
So
By the way,
that's
before you
going to
go
be
forward, if you
interesting.
check Basketball References MVP tracker, he's 9th.
So
He's 9th.
again,
That's what I mean. Yeah, I'm just putting
context
it out
given,
there.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, context given. Obviously, Buddy Hield is playing out of his mind. For those who are not understanding exactly what I mean when I say his shooting splits might be something that is a little questionable. Currently averaging 21.1 points per game, 2.3 assists, 4.5 rebounds. That stuff is realistic. The shooting splits are 51, or let me round up, 52, 51, 86. Yes, I said 51% from the 3-point line, 52% from the field. That is something that, although, we've always heard the joke of Buddy Hield built like Clay, shoot like Steph, right? But 51% on 9 attempts per game.
I was going to say at almost double-digit attempts is insanity.
Look, man, if he's able to keep that up, that is an otherworldly feat that even his teammate Steph Curry, for context, this season is shooting 9 3-point attempts per game this season and is hitting 42%. So that goes to give you a real understanding of how significant the gap is. Now, granted, Buddy Hield gets different looks than Steph Curry, but hitting 51% from beyond the arc is an insane clip. So I will say the one part where I have a little bit of a question mark is the sustainability of Buddy Hield's shooting, but everything else looks realistic. I like the play of Andrew Wiggins, who seems to be a little bit back on top of his game after.
He's been good.
Yeah,
he's been good.
He had a very rough into last year, especially due to personal reasons that a lot of people were unaware of and soon became aware of this offseason related to the passing of his father. I think this year he's coming in with a much more clear mind, seems to be playing a little bit more to the 2022-ish version of Andrew Wiggins. This team right now is one of the best offensive teams in the league, currently 3rd in points per game and 3rd in offensive rating. They're a team that Steve Kerr is kind of priding himself in going, 10 and 11 deep. Unironically, was unable to go that deep in the Olympics, but I digress. This is a team that I think is shooting the absolute lights out of the ball, and it is doing the dividends. This is one of those things where, TV, we spoke about this a lot last year about the ability for somebody else to not only put pressure on the rim outside of Steph Curry, but being able to create open opportunities outside of Steph Curry. Buddy Hield has really shaped himself into that secondary playmaker, both as a shooter and as an off-ball mover for this team. And he is a breath of fresh air for this squad that they have desperately needed. And so far, it has really paid dividends for them. I think this is for real. If Buddy is for real, then this team is on another level. But I think regardless of if these shooting splits survive, this team looks like the truth.
I'm gonna agree with you here. I think they're for real. And you talked about the shooting. Obviously, that is the biggest talking point right now. They are number 1 in 3-point field. They are number 3 in 3-point field goals made. They're also 4th in percentage. When they talked about having 50% of their shots from 3, they weren't kidding, bro. They weren't kidding whatsoever. And they're turning people obviously Andrew Wiggins is shooting a bunch of 3s. Moses Moody is shooting a crazy amount of 3s. Gary Payton, who's not considered really 3-point shooter, is shooting a crap ton of 3s. Everyone has bought into the system, and it's working to a T right now. But the main thing I want to focus on this team, and this is why I think this team is going to be tough to stop all season long, is they're number 1 in rebounding. Remember, we thought that big man position was going to be a tough position in terms of trying to get inside and also gobble up some rebounds. They found a strategy with this 3-point strategy that, when you guys play basketball, right? When you shoot a 3-pointer, it's going to be a long shot, long rebound. So basically, what the Warriors do on these plays is hit a 3 and have people just camp on the mid-range area and just wait for the long rebound and just kick it back out. Try it again. Do it again. Kick it back out. This strategy, teams are not prepared for this. We talk about how the shooting is gonna how can you really keep shooting, especially when you don't have the rebounding. Well, everyone is bought into the system that and understanding we're going to be shooting a bunch of threes. This is where you're going to need to be in terms of the rebounds, and they are all committed to it. If you look at even just the individual statistics in terms of rebounding, you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 players this year for the Warriors averaging at least 4 rebounds per game, which is kind of crazy. Kind of think about it, especially because their team is littered with guards, but they just know exactly where to be, and they're making sure. And you've seen it in the Boston Celtics game yesterday, that they've got opportunity after opportunity at these threes because people just know where the ball is going to land. I think this team is for real. I've seen a tweet saying that they're kind of like the New England Patriots of the NBA, where it feels like every time that this Warriors team is down, that they always seem to adjust, like and try to still be competitive. That's what it starts to feel like. And now they're kind of entering this new iteration of this team. I think this team is for real, man. This team is looking real good and looking like a real threat early on.
You mentioned it beforehand. The rebounding thing really stood out to me too. 6 players at least averaging 1 offensive rebound as well. And Kevon Looney, he's found himself a role somewhere still on this team. Nearly 4.5 offensive rebounds per game on the season so far.
They don't win yesterday's game against the Celtics without Kevon Looney. This man was instrumental.
Yeah, man. I think that he has been able to make himself still useful on a team that, is moving towards a more pace and space, kind of what we were used to in their better years of being able to just have insane wing play, very good three-point shooting across the board, playing with much more tempo. This is a team that in terms of, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of pace, they're right around middle of the pack in the league. This is a team that does want to play a little bit faster, but has found a real way to carve out efficient offense in the half court. Part of that being crashing the glass, like you said, both on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, and making the most out of that. When you have 2 3-point shooters like a Steph Curry and a Buddy Hield, and you have high offensive rebounding rates like a Kevon Looney adds, you're creating more and more opportunities for that ball to go through the bucket. And we have 2 of the better shooters in the league. Like I said, 42+% across the board for those 2 guys. Probably 2 of the top, let's say, 10 shooters percentage-wise, especially on that volume so far this season as well. You got to be happy with it, especially with what they're doing on offense.
100%. This Golden State team, man, every time we think they're down, they always seem to find their way back up. And you love to see this new iteration of this team. Steph Curry is having fun. Everyone's bought in. You love to see it. All right, Jay, next team. The Phoenix Suns, another team who's 7-1. And this team, man, they seem to always pull out these wins late. Every single time. You always think this team is, they might lose one of these close games eventually. Nope, they always seem to pull them out, and Kevin Durant looks like he's in the middle of the MVP conversation right now. But Jay, I want to hear from you. Is this team for real, or are they a facade?
It's funny that you mentioned closing out the fourth quarter. That was not the conversation we were having about this team just last season, right? This was a team
the opposite.
This is a team that struggled. Exactly. This is a team that struggled to close games last year. They were a team that would tend to struggle in the third quarter. The game would get close, and then late game execution for this team would kind of always take their win off the board. And it happened a few notable times last season, to the point that it became almost a trend in a way. But TV, here's the thing that stood out to me, and I'm going to say that they're for real, and it's for this reason. I believe that Bud Ball is working.
Bud Ball is working.
Yes, Mike Budenholzer and his offensive philosophy for this basketball team is already seemingly imprinting on this 3-star led squad. Let me explain. Last season, the Phoenix Suns, in terms of 3-point attempts per game, just last year, they were all the way down at 25th at 32.3 3-point attempts per game. This season, they are 8th at 39.5. 8th, from 25 all the way up to 8th. But it goes deeper than that, because one of the things that transitions this team more to a 3-point shooting team compared to last year is that all 3 of their best players thrive, particularly in one area. Ironically, they also thrive in the area that is the mascot of this show's favorite area as well, DeMar DeRozan, which is the mid-range area. Their three stars between Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal all thrive in the mid-range offense. And last year particularly, it showed. Last season, unironically behind only my Chicago Bulls with DeMar DeRozan, the Phoenix Suns were second in field goal attempts in the mid-range area at 13.8 attempts per game just last season. This season, they are significantly further down the list, to the point that I believe now they're 8th at about 10.1. That is them understanding the philosophy of threes versus long twos. Just there's a math discrepancy there, and leaning towards bud ball has helped them play more efficient basketball on the offensive end. You just see a lot more movement from this team. They just come off as a more efficient team so far this year. And they're guarding too, which is obviously always a big thing for this team, considering the firepower they have on the offense.
Yeah, no, this team is absolutely killing it. And it feels like if you ever get close to this team, they have KD, they got Devin Booker. It feels like they're gonna pull it out. This is what we thought was gonna happen last year when this team finally had a full season together, and it didn't seem to be the case. Bud Ball has figuring it out, more threes, and just being able to pull it out at the end of the games, which you have to love. And he's not. And the thing is, he's not effing around, Coach Bud. He knows at the end of this game that you have probably the best player on the court and Kevin Durant most of the time. Just give him the ball and let him work, and that's been working 100%. That's why I think that he's in the middle of MVP discussions. But for me, man, I'm going to say that this is a bit of a facade, in my opinion, this Phoenix Suns team. I love what Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are doing. I'm not sold on the rest of this team, man. I think that when you're especially, Kevin Durant, when we talk about LeBron James and his longevity, we got to shout out KD's too. Remember, this man missed a whole year due to an injury, which people think would be a death sentence to someone who's 6'10" or over, and this man somehow continues to get better every single year. It's completely surprising, but he's been absolutely fantastic this year. But this Phoenix Suns team cannot seem to get a big lead for the life of them. It always feels like when it comes to even the good or the bad teams, it always seems to stay close. And at the end of the day, as much as we want to like Ryan Dunn, we want to like some of the bench players, the addition of Tyus Jones, Royce O'Neal, they're a good defense, but there's a lot of cones in that backcourt who can't really stay in front of their men. Grayson Allen has heavily regressed this year compared to last season as well. As much as I like the 7-1 start, as much as I love what Kevin Durant is doing, I'm just not sold on the rest of this team, and I don't think how they're winning right now is going to be sustainable for the rest of the season. Now, do I think they're going to be? Does this mean I think they're a playing team? No, but I don't think they're going to finish the top 1, 2, or 3 seed this year. I think that they're still going to be good. I think this whole season as a team would be better for them, but I just don't think that they're going to be able to lean on this Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, especially trying to lead them late and just be okay with the rest of the guys being average to below average.
I think you make a really good point. Obviously, this is a team that is still pretty susceptible if they lose any of their top 3 guys, especially like you mentioned beforehand, with the lack of production from the other guys around them. More particularly Grayson Allen, I think is a really good point, because I think especially in terms of replaceability, I don't think that he can play up to par of a Bradley Beal, for example, if Bradley were to miss time. But he is the guy that is most likely to circumvent some of the 3-point shooting that Bradley Beal or a Devin Booker provide right at the guard position. And so far, he has not necessarily played up to that. We also understand that Tyus Jones and Monte Morris in the backcourt are not necessarily known for offensive prowess in terms of taking on more of a scoring role. These are setup guys. These are guys who are helping with organizing offense and keeping turnovers low, not necessarily being assertive on that side of the ball. I think the one pushback I'll give you, and the reason why I do think there is a certain level of sustainability to this, is that we have an understanding and a very good track record as well under Mike Budenholzer that there is a floor with Bud in the regular season, and it's typically around 45 to 50 games. And that gives me the belief that as long as you have Mike Budenholzer and his philosophy through the regular season, I think this is a team that is always going to float around the top 4 seed, and in the Western Conference, that's all you need, because if you have home court advantage, that gives you significant room to play with in a Western Conference that is stacked across the board. So I think that this is a team that has a very solid floor with Mike Budenholzer at the helm. And if you have any combination of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, I think he's going to be able to kind of make wine out of water, so to speak. He's done it so many times. We've seen it across the board, from the Atlanta Hawks teams to the Milwaukee Bucks teams, and now in the early goings with the Phoenix Suns as well.
100%. I mean, I would love to see this team could continue to like progress the way that they are. I just, if I had a bit more confidence in the rest of those guys, then I would like be like fully on board with this team. But until I see that, I'm still very much. I know Jusuf Nurkic hit a near half-court shot yesterday, but at the same time, I'm still worried about their center position, the depth that they have there. At this point, there's even some points this season where I'm like, I think they're just better off starting Mason Plumlee at this point over Jusuf Nurkic. But I just think there's just so many question marks around, and with like, I know like injuries, we can't really predict those or not, but like expecting Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, especially with their injury history, to kind of be there for the good part of the games to help them like put them over the top, it's gonna be unrealistic for like this, like at this point in their career. So, you know, I'm a fan of theirs, but I think that we need to temper our expectations just a little bit on this Phoenix Suns team. But this one's gonna be interesting because the lone undefeated team left in the NBA season, it's not the Thunder, it's not the Celtics. Jay, it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. Best start to the season in franchise history, 9-0. Best start to the season by a first-year head coach of a team in Kenny Atkinson there, 9-0. They've looked fantastic. They've won in so many different ways. They've had a come from behind win. They've had a win where Donovan Mitchell takes over. We've had a near 40-point Darius Garland game. You've had like a 28-12 Evan Mobley game. They've won in like so many different fashions. Jay, is this casting for real or a facade?
I think they're for real, bro. I said in my over-under video on TikTok, go ahead and check that out if you need a reference. I said that this team felt like the squad in the Eastern Conference that nobody was talking about, and that everybody is going to be wondering about how they finish in the top 2, top 3 in the Eastern Conference at the end of the year, given all of the moves from Philadelphia and New York and the return of the champion Boston Celtics and the fact that the Miami Heat are always scrappy. Like they all of those teams got very solid screen time throughout the offseason. But this Cleveland Cavaliers team and the continuity they were able to build over the summer, built with the fact that they have a coach they believe in a little bit more in Kenny Atkinson, that guy is getting the most out of this squad. And like you mentioned, I think it's more important to kind of lean this way. This team is winning in a multitude of different ways. And I'm going to actually pass it to you, but I want to end off on this. The most important thing about this season, in my eyes, in terms of the Cleveland Cavaliers, not only maximizing this year, but also having the understanding that there is real talk around their core four, given the structure. The play of Evan Mobley so far this season was going to be very important. And so far, Kenny Atkinson has not only unleashed, but empowered Evan Mobley in a way that I think has officially put this team over the top, where we can finally consider them as real championship contenders. And that is just something that a season ago, I don't feel like I would have been as confident to say.
I am 100% with you. I am for real with this. And we got to remember where Kenny Atkinson has come from. Remember that Brooklyn Nets team? A team that no one expected to play well? His MO is player empowerment. Who is the guy that you want on your sideline when Evan Mobley has plateaued in his development? Who is the guy you want on your sideline when Darius Garland is coming off the worst season of his career? A team where they feel like, you know, with their core four healthy, that they can't play the best basketball. How they can be able to make sure that you get the best out of everyone. Who do you call? Kenny Atkinson. You bring in this guy to do this, because not only is he giving Evan Mobley touches in the post, he's allowing Evan Mobley to bring up the ball on a fast break, making sure that he's able to go to the rim, making sure that Jared Allen is still involved in the offense, being that defensive anchor. Darius Garland, making sure that making him shoot more threes, making sure that he's like moving better off ball. This Cleveland Cavaliers team is clicking on all cylinders, top 5 in defense, number 1 in the league in offense. They're shooting the 3 ball. And the thing is, it doesn't even stop with the core 4. Ty Jerome coming off the bench has been a solid backup point guard for this team. Sam Merrill we've talked about him last year a bunch. He's a great 3-point shooter. Dean Wade, George Niang, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert. Karis LeVert has been fantastic this year coming off the bench. You have everyone locked in, and we still haven't even seen the addition of Max Strus into the rotation yet. So the fact that they're getting all of this, best start of in franchise history, seeing the change in head coach is definitely something that we ought to look at here. And Kenny Atkinson so far has really turned this team around. There were some games there which, even when the games looked like they were like gonna give up, they were able to pull through. They still have that star in Donovan Mitchell. I think this team is finally figuring out how to put it together. And it took them 3 years, man. You got to remember, this team has been together for 3 years. It's not like you're changing like an overhaul of the roster. They know how to play together. They just need a coach to put it together.
Yeah, the continuity aspect of this team is one of the biggest talking points for me coming into this year, because a lot of the other teams in the Eastern Conference, outside of probably the Boston Celtics that we considered as real contenders, were having real like integration issues. Milwaukee's still trying to understand how Giannis and Damian Lillard coexist. Obviously, Philadelphia's full roster overhaul, right? The New York Knicks with their significant moves as well. Like, this team staying together meant a lot. And I think something that's really important is a lot of the talk over the offseason was the idea of, do you need to move a Darius Garland? Do you need to move a Jared Allen? They found a way to create an offense and defense structure where they're able to stagger the groups of Donovan Mitchell with Evan Mobley and Darius Garland with Jared Allen in a way where those two groups are able to operate both together and in part of each other in a way that you're able to maximize the strengths of both guards and both bigs. And that's all this team really ever needed. I think the worry of whether or not they needed to move off of one of these guys was always more so a concern about whether or not Evan Mobley had another gear and whether or not he was going to actually be able to reach that next level. I think the fact that now he's been so empowered so far this season, especially as a driver and as a shot creator, I've been seeing this man pull up at the mid-range spot a lot more confidently throughout this season. Those are going to be staple possessions that we see throughout the year. The ones where he's, like you said earlier, taking the ball off the glass and operating in transition, taking on a Giannis Antetokounmpo one-on-one, jamming on Brook Lopez's head, right? Those are the kind of offensive possessions that are going to end up defining the growth of this Cavaliers team, because paired with Darius Garland obviously kind of reviving himself after a struggle last season, which he did deal with a lot of injury concerns, including not being able to eat for a month due to a jaw injury, right? This team, when healthy, was destined to be one of the more dangerous teams in the Eastern Conference, simply off the fact that they nearly won 50 games last year and they weren't healthy. So now we're just now we're just seeing all of the cylinders firing at the same time. And when you're talking about having one of the top guards in the league in Donovan Mitchell, a real DPOY level candidate in Evan Mobley, who has been able to like further open up his game on the offensive end, and my lead 6 man of the year guy for right now, if I had a ballot for it, in Karis LeVert, paired with their 3-point barrage that they have with their other guys coming off the bench, and the fact that they haven't had Max Strus play a game yet. This team, I think, is as for real as it gets. I wouldn't pick them to obviously take down Boston just yet, but they have a play style that I believe is both sustainable and is going to make them a top 2, top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I feel like people are too quick to like break up such talented teams, and when you have a chance to like have this team, like these 4 group of like guys together, it's more of, how can we fit these together instead of, let's, after one season, let's try and break this apart. Gotta let things marinate, man. You gotta let things marinate. And the Cavs were patient with it. 3rd season in, let's see if they can continue this up, because me and Jay both think they're for real. They are a great team so far. Let's strip down to the bottom a bit, though, Jay. We talked about so many great teams so far this year. The first three teams we talked about have a combined 2 losses. This is how great these first 3 teams have been. Now let's go to a team that just cannot seem to keep their roster healthy, man. The New Orleans Pelicans. For once, Zion and Brandon Ingram are healthy together, which is great. But the fact that there's no DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, and Trey Murphy means that they're getting no production anywhere else. Freaking Yves Messi has been one of their top score candidates, and this man's a rookie at trying to figure out the setup position. Jay, when I say for real Facade, is this the version of the Pelicans we're going to see all year long? Is this like what we can expect more of, or is this a facade? Is there like more room to improve for them?
I mean, of course, there's more room for them to improve, but I'm going to say this is for real. This is the team they've been.
Yes.
Every iteration of this squad over the last 4 years, honestly, since the Zion Williamson era began, this has always been the issue. This has always been the thing that's plagued them. The roster is built beautifully in terms of the array of talent that they have between three-point shooting wings like Trey Murphy and Jordan Hawkins, a defensive ace in Herb Jones, a pesky player in the backcourt like a Jose Alvarado, star level guard in CJ McCollum, 2 wing players that both can operate well with the ball in their hands in Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. Like, they have a beautifully built roster in terms of the overall talent distribution across the board. It's one of the reasons that it was easy to kind of move off of a Dyson Daniels and a Larry Nance Jr. to consolidate, was because they just had so much talent that they didn't really even have a legitimate place for Dyson Daniels in the rotation on this team, right? And yet here we are once again, where you mentioned it unironically, the 2 guys we tend to associate with injury history on this team, and Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, are healthy, and the squad around them is now not up to par. I think this is just going to be where the New Orleans Pelicans are. There is going to be a significant shakeup for this team. It might not be this year just due to the naivety of David Griffin in the front office. But I genuinely believe that this team is going to have a real come to Jesus moment about understanding what their future is moving forward. And I think that although, yes, this is year 1 with DeJounte Murray, and I think that he still can be a legitimate building block next to Zion Williamson, real decisions need to be made on Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, because I think this team needs to start preparing for the fact that this iteration just cannot seem to keep the puzzle pieces together. And that's, although you can't control that, you're continuing to bite off more of Zion Williamson's early prime. And the more that you do that, kind of wasting time playing with the unknown, the kind of deeper of water they continue to fall into. This is clearly is good at identifying young talent. I think that they need to maybe start finally throwing those darts at the wall, because I mean, what more can the universe do to your team to tell you maybe you need to do something different, right? What else can they what other thing can the basketball gods from the sky send down your way to say, bruh, we need you to do something legitimately different, and going after DeJounte Murray is not necessarily what we had in mind.
Well, I hope that Brandon Boston playing 24 minutes a game is giving them that exact message, saying we really need to switch things up, because clearly he's like, we applaud the Cleveland Cavaliers, their patience with this team. And to a certain extent, you got to applaud the Pelicans for saying, you know what, we like our players. We just need to wait for them to all be healthy. But the fact that this has been a conversation since, 2020, pull the plug, man. So at the end of the day, when seeing this team is just sad. Watching this team, seeing a pick and roll between Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram is just sad, because I see the amount of times I've seen a defender just give Brandon Ingram a foot of space because they know he's not going to pull up for three. He wants to dribble into that mid-range and take a freaking contested jumper. That it just like it feels like none of these guys can really be fully, be themselves in this because they're the only two that can create shots. And when their pick and roll isn't working, when their two-man game isn't working, the team just looks garbage. And that's what this team has looked so far this year. They've looked garbage. Shout out to Yves Missy. I thought he was going to be a good fit for them, especially at the center position. Shout out to Brandon Mawson, who's coming back into the rotations in our lives. But clearly, this Pelicans team cannot get even one game together of their core guys. And seeing like CJ McCollum saying, "Oh, we're gonna miss him for 3 weeks." Herb Jones, we're gonna miss him to 2 to 4 weeks. This is the year I said in like my preview that this is the final. Let's see what the Pelicans, because if anything goes wrong, it's time to pull the plug. And I think that watching it so far this season, and even though you got your two best players playing and it's looking just as bad because they have no one around them, I think it's really time for the Pelicans to really look themselves in the mirror.
This is a team that is being forced to face reality in a real way.
In a really unfortunate way. And
I agree with you. I just raved about their overall makeup as a roster. I also love this guy in Javonte Green, former Bull. He's playing 21 minutes as a small ball center for this team. It's some things that are just not going to translate to long-term success. And I think that this team has to eventually look themselves in the mirror and understand, like, dude, it's not going to get any better from here because they don't have any precedent that indicates that there's somewhere further ahead they can get. Everything about the Pelicans in the Zion Williamson era has been hypothetical. What if Zion is healthy? What if Brandon Ingram is healthy? What if CJ McCollum can reemerge himself as a star guard in the backcourt? How about the emergence of a Trey Murphy III and Herb Jones? Should Trey Murphy III and Herb Jones be starting over Brandon Ingram? Well, if they do that, where should Brandon Ingram be moved? There's all of these question marks around the New Orleans Pelicans, and we've had this for the last, as you mentioned, about 4 years now. And the sample size simply indicates the good old phrase that we all come back to. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing every single time, expecting a new result. And guess what? No. Getting DeJounte Murray does not count as doing something different.
Yes.
All it does is feel like putting a cherry on top of a shit sandwich, like you mentioned before. And this is one of those things where I genuinely believe that the New Orleans Pelicans, they might not want to pull the plug, but somebody's going to have to take them off of life support, bro.
At least with the 76ers and with the Hawks, like back in the day, you have like 1 year you can point to saying like, look, we were this close here that we can something like, it's like a benchmark for what they could potentially do. The Pelicans have a 6-game series versus the Phoenix Suns as a potential thing, and that's in the first round. Pull the plug. I hate seeing this anymore. I've been waiting for this team for years, and now I'm just sad. This team has just made me sad. Let's move on. Another team that's been sad to watch, mostly because we know how good their top 2 stars are. But the fact that you see a Giannis Antetokounmpo-led team, 1-6 so far this year, with Damian Lillard healthy, Jay, I mean, there's so much to talk about this Bucks team. But do you think this team is for real, or is this team a facade?
Now, what do we mean in that context? I got to be honest with you. Because this team, that question is very tricky compared to the other squads.
Okay. So I guess for the Milwaukee Bucks, obviously they're not a bottom of the league team, right? We could be both. We could both say that. Like we're not gonna. Cause this record doesn't like indicate that they're a bottom of the league team. But what I will say is like, do we think that the Bucks championship contender status, them making a deep playoff run, is that like still a for real thing? Like, is it a facade? What we're seeing right now is them not being that, or are they still kind of that, potential championship caliber team?
I think it's a facade, dude. I don't
Yeah.
think that Milwaukee is as good as people want them to be. This is one of those theoretical teams. You remember how people were making jokes about the Los Angeles Lakers in the bubble being like a super team if it was 2014? Milwaukee is kind of creeping into that kind of territory when you look at the overall build of their team. And TV, we've joked about it beforehand. They're just old. TV,
Yes.
they're just old. This is a team where they have a head coach and Doc Rivers who is still kind of resting off the laurels of his one-time championship in Boston. And
Mhm.
so far this season, it's kind of only re-insinuated what we've already known, which is that this team outside of Giannis, and even Giannis has been a bit questionable so far this season, is beyond their prime. I mean, TV, here's the thing. When you think about overall athleticism and how it shows on a team, the directions that you can look at are protecting the glass, forcing turnovers, and offensive rebounding, right? In offensive rebounding, they are second to last in the entire NBA. In forcing turnovers, aka I'm going to use steals for this one. In forcing turnovers, they are second to last. Oh, excuse me. Offensive rebounding, they're third to last, and forcing steals, they are second to last in the NBA so far this season. And 3-point shooting, they are middle of the pack. And points per game, they are middle of the pack. TV in assists per game, they are third from or second from the bottom. Third from the bottom.
They're from the
This is
bottom.
a
Yeah.
this is a team that across the board, you don't create easy, efficient offense. You don't force turnovers. You don't offensive rebound. You
It's
don't
literally just
protect the
Damon
rim.
Giannis. It's literally just Damon Giannis. That's literally what this team is, and everyone else are just cones. Everyone else are just cones at this point.
It's like just name the thing that you would need to thrive in this league and as your bread and butter. Like you said, they are living and dying by the Giannis Damian Lillard two-man game. And we just know we have too good of a sample size across NBA history that can only get you so far. The two-man super team can only get you so far. The Los Angeles Lakers have learned this both in good faith and in bad faith with the combination of
Yes.
LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard are still two of the top 15 players in the NBA this year. The issue is that Giannis is not the rim protector that he once was, and this Milwaukee Bucks team is no longer built with the backbone of being a team that thrives with a defensive identity the way they were when they won the championship back in 2021.
Bro.
I just don't
Yeah.
know. Name the thing that makes you still a believer of Milwaukee Bucks. Don't worry, I'll wait.
It's nothing as a team in general. I only have faith in. Firstly, I'm gonna say they're a facade. Yeah, I will say they're a facade. But the only thing I'm leading on this team is the fact that Damian Lillard and Giannis are having good seasons. Because besides them, here's some of what's happening with the other guys. Brook Lopez, 10 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, under 40% from the field, under 30% from three. Gary Trent Jr. They're signing their two guard to reunite him with Damian Lillard. Thank you, Raptors, for not paying this man, because this man's averaging 8 points per game, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 28% shooting from the field. Bro, like Bobby Portis has had one amazing half of basketball and has been just an inconsistent wreck the rest of this way. At least he's averaging 47% from the field. Shout out to crazy eyes Bobby Portis. But man, this team is where is the passion? Where is the energy from this team? Because you're clearly not getting it from Darvin Ham and Doc Rivers up there. And the thing is, Doc Rivers said the other day, we're fine. We just have to make it to the playoffs and we're good. No. We are not living by this again. Because we've seen what happens when, we talked about it earlier with the freaking, with other teams. You can't just say, wait to the playoffs, wait till we're healthy, wait till Chris Middleton comes back, as if he's going to save all of this. Because they're not. being a bottom 10 offense and a bottom 10 defense is not going to be solved by Chris Middleton. I'm sorry. But honestly, at this point with the Bucks, like, they've gotten too old. Everyone else around them is getting better as they continue to get worse. This team just can't compete as much anymore. I think they will still end up getting, a potential top 6 seed. I think they'll still finish in top 6. But do I have any confidence in them being a title contender? No, I do not. And for me, the only way that they could change this is not even with their current rotation in general. Bro, at this point, if I'm Doc Rivers, try out some more Andre Jackson minutes. Try Marjon Beauchamp out there. Ryan Rollins. Anyone get some life into this team. Because they clearly are not finding it. One of the big things I hate about this Milwaukee Bucks team is that they've been relying on these guys, and that's completely fair. They won you a championship. Does people realize how bad at drafting they are? Like, how bad? Like, at least with some of the good teams, you can find like a gem like a Brandon Pajemski. You could find like people in the second round, late first round. They just declined next year's team option for Marjon Beauchamp. This guy's supposed to be a good piece for them going forward. What's happening with Tyler Smith? People thought that he was going to be a good foreman for this team. Andre Jackson. There's also this man called AJ Johnson. Like, who are these guys going to be doing to this Bucks team long term? Nothing. They haven't drafted well. They haven't improved the roster. And now you just have a bunch of old guys leaning on like Giannis and Dame to try to take him to the promised land, which, like you mentioned, that can only take you so far. 2 top 10 scorers on your team, you can't even get more than 1 win right now. Ridiculous.
Look, man, there's this insane delusion across the league with teams like the Denver Nuggets, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Philadelphia 76ers, where the front office has placed and the coaching staff for that matter, has placed almost an exuberant amount of pressure on their lead stars to carry past the flaws and foibles of their rosters.
At least with the Denver Nuggets, though, you see progression in Payne Watson. Christian Braun's been phenomenal this year. I don't care what people say. He's been great this year.
Mm-hmm.
But at least they have guys like waiting in the wings to get moved up. What has Milwaukee done? Nothing.
You're not Absolutely wrong, TV, nothing. But I would also say for the Denver Nuggets, they are relying on Nikola Jokic to basically average a triple-double while probably having to be dang near the leading scorer in the entire league.
Leading scorer of the league, leading rebounder of the league, leading assist man of the league. That's the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I mean, they literally need this dude to be the end-all, be-all in order for them to win basketball games. And I think when it comes to the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers, there's this like delusional belief that like they are just going to like slide into the postseason. And don't get me wrong, like I do understand the concept that like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers, when healthy, are like good enough to at least be a top 8 team in the East. And at the end of the day, yeah, sure, I guess once you get to the postseason, all bets are off. But positioning within the postseason definitely matters, especially in the Eastern Conference that when we came into the beginning of the season, we believed was relatively top-heavy. Teams like Cleveland, teams like Boston, teams like the Knicks are still there in the mix. I still think Orlando, with a healthy Paolo Banchero, was looking like they would look like they were going to take yet another step after taking a really good stride last year. Now, we hope Paolo Banchero comes back and is able to continue to ball out because he was on an all-NBA trajectory before the injury. But, like, I think that Milwaukee and Philly just think that if they can sleepwalk their way through the regular season, the minute they get to the postseason, it's going to be all peaches and cream. And I think they're going to be very sadly mistaken, and they're going to get significantly humbled when they run into the wrong matchup, and then they're blaming what's Paul George's favorite thing to do at the end of the season press conference: lack of continuity, inability to build reps with one another. These are the things that everybody ends up pointing to, and they're the things that are going to end up killing both of these teams later on in the year. Mark my words, both of these teams are going to make the postseason, not where they projected themselves to finish, and both teams are going to blame lack of continuity and lack of talent, despite both being teams that legitimately have the star power to be considered championship contenders. That's why we had them at the top of the East before the season started.
Yeah, I mean, you just think, man, they had the experience. They have these things that you think that after being in the league for so long, having this core for so long, that they at least would understand the repercussions for just sleepwalking, and especially with all these teams getting better. Clearly not. And now they're gonna probably face the consequences at the end of the season. So I don't know what the Bucks need to do to change this. Hopefully hopefully Chris Milton is all that they say that he's gonna be, and hopefully he comes back and changes everything around. I highly doubt it though. I highly doubt it. Last person though, we're not gonna be doing a team, but one person that I've had, you know, my eye on this season, especially because he was my top pick in fantasy this year. We have a basketball content creator fantasy league, and he was my first pick. And I have some beef with you, Tyrese Haliburton, right now. That's all I'm saying. Because currently, right now, he is averaging just ridiculously low numbers for someone of his caliber. They talked about him having some back issues right now, but the Pacers, a 500 record. Not a lot has to do with him averaging 16 points per game, 7 assists, under 40% from the field, under 30% from three, even weirdly enough, 73% from the free throw line. Jay, is this stuff for Tyrese Haliburton for real, or is it a facade?
Indiana Pacers fans are not going to like me for saying this, bro, but I think what we're seeing is for real. I know that there's a quote-unquote viral clip going around of Austin Rivers talking about wanting to take LaMelo Ball over at Tyrese Haliburton, right? And a lot of uproar kind of came out of the concept that, like, Tyrese Haliburton has played elite level basketball on the playoffs caliber stage. He's a guy that literally just came off of leading his team by hook or crook to the Eastern Conference Finals just a season ago. He's a guy that was an all-NBA guy, all-NBA pro just last season, and had the Indiana Pacers as like the must-watch NBA League Pass team of the year just a season ago. How could he possibly be outclassed by LaMelo Ball? I said this once again. Check the tape for the TikToks. I said this on my over-under TikTok video related to the Indiana Pacers, that one of my biggest questions for the Pacers this year is, which Tyrese Haliburton were we going to get? The one prior to the lower leg injury, or the one afterwards? The one that we saw going into the NBA Cup final against the Los Angeles Lakers, that dude was shooting at a Steph Curry level, like a 2016 Steph Curry level clip.
This guy was a top 3 MVP candidate at that time.
Yes, actually, you know what, TV, let's framework it around that. This was a guy who, for the first 2 to 3 months of the NBA season, was in the top 5 in MVP discussion, and significantly plummeted down to probably around 9th or 10th by the end of the regular season. You just mentioned, TV just mentioned that he was 3rd at one point going into the NBA Cup final. This is a guy who I think his lack of aggression offensively, a guy who I think could honestly, the dude is an offensive savant. I would make an argument that in terms of running an offense, he is the second most dynamic offensive creator in basketball behind only Nikola Jokic in terms of being able to create opportunities for the entire team when he is on the floor. He also is only taking 14 shots a game. That's one of those things where I think when Austin Rivers makes his declaration that he would take a LaMelo Ball over a Tyrese Haliburton, is because they both are high-level facilitators, right? The biggest discrepancy, I would just say the biggest difference between a LaMelo Ball and a Tyrese Haliburton is Tyrese plays with more control, while LaMelo Ball is much more assertive. And I think that when you look at this Indiana Pacers team that lacks a real offensive creator outside of Pascal Siakam, this is a golden opportunity as Tyrese Haliburton to be a real offensive hub, both as a distributor and as a scorer. And for some reason, Buddy has a lack of aggression that I think is completely unwarranted. That doesn't even line up with the fact that the boy is shooting 27% from beyond the arc on nearly 8 attempts per game. there's such thing as coming down to earth, and then there's plummeting into a crater. We're on the plummeting into the craters territory with Tyrese Haliburton, and I pray that's not his real, that's not the real version of him, because every other version of Tyrese up until this point has shot around 40% from three. So I do believe that there is a trend upwards coming somewhere. But at the same time, his lack of assertiveness on the offensive end, and the fact that he is, it's kind of him and Trae Young for worst defender in the NBA. Maybe him, Trae Young, and like Damian Lillard for worst defender in the NBA in the backcourt in terms of lead guards. Like, offensive assertiveness, transition play, and distribution are like the only things that make Tyrese Haliburton elite. So, like, he has to be able to, like, play up to the caliber of all three of those skill sets. And when he's not, like he's not right now, he's just a regular dude. He's just your regular run-of-the-mill top 15 point guard that, I mean, yeah, he's better than Tyus Jones, I guess, when he's playing at this level. Of course, I would take Tyrese Haliburton over Tyus Jones. I'm just joking. But I'm saying that to say, like, he becomes very average when he's not shooting the ball at a 40% clip, and he's not assertive the way he kind of has been throughout the majority of his career.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what sucks about like I will say that this is a facade. I think we will see a better version of Tyrese Haliburton this year. Okay. I think he does improve. I think he becomes maybe not the last year version of Tyrese Haliburton, but I think he'll come down, like he'll like go more towards his his norms like going into this season. But the thing was, what's really sad about this is that we saw like what happened after the injury last year when he tried to play through the injury, but he ended off the season so well. Like, people forget in that series versus the New York Knicks, against the New York Knicks, like before they faced the Boston Celtics, like he was finding himself again. Like near the end, he was averaging like 20-something points per game, and like back to pushing the pace. But this year, like, he is not embodying what this Pacers team was so good last year. What happened to the pace of this team? This is like a bottom 5 pace team when they were like number 1 by far last year. This is just not the same Pacers team, and you have to point this blame to Tyrese Haliburton. Whether it's injuries, whether it's the back problems, which is being reported right now, he's not playing like himself. Like I said, I think this is a facade. I think he'll play better, but he deserves the brunt of the blame as to why the Pacers aren't doing a lot better. We've seen how good he can be. I know that the 3-point shooter will come around and all that, but he is like, this team could be so much better, especially with the way Ben Mathurin starting off the year. He's actually doing pretty solid. If Tyrese Haliburton was the Tyrese Haliburton of like last year, even like 90% of that, this Pacers team would have potentially been in that same conversations as like a 6-7 win team in the East right now, which would put them clearly in the top 3. But even though they're 3 right now, it's not looking great.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrese Haliburton has the kind of offensive play style as a distributor where if he were just a little bit more aggressive, and we've seen it in the postseason, that series against the Knicks indicated that, like, when he needs to turn up, he is more than capable. That is a guy who can lead a top 2, top 3 offense in the entire NBA and legitimately drive offense to the point where the Indiana Pacers on a regular season level could be a top 3, top 4 seed, comfortably.
Yes.
When he does not play to the all-star caliber level that we know he is capable of, this team is very average. And I like Pascal, and I like Ben Mathurin. And I would also say another guy who's kind of regressed in a way this year, Andrew Nembhard. We thought that he was going to build off of last year. And so far, I haven't seen too much from him, which is also pretty intriguing given the fact that they genuinely need somebody in the backcourt to step up, given the struggles of Tyrese Haliburton so far in the early going. So this is a team that we've always known this, even with the signing, even with the acquisition of Pascal Siakam, this team goes as Tyrese Haliburton goes. And as far as this season has shown us, that seems to be just about right, both for good and for bad.
They just need to find their identity again. They need to get back to what they were good at, what they were great at, what they were so like fun to watch with last year. And again, that does start with Tyrese. They go as he goes, as you mentioned. I think again, this is a facade. I think we'll see a better version of him, but that doesn't like excuse him from the poor start he's had so far to start this season. But yeah, these are the 6 players / teams. Let us know down below if you agree or disagree with our talking points. Are these players or teams real for real Facade? Let us know in the comment section down below. Jay, it's time for the staples of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, and we're gonna start off with the NBA draft. There are a lot of things that we didn't talk about to start off the season, but I think this is a great place to do it because the draft today is we're gonna try to draft the most surprising players this year who have been surprisingly good. So players that we thought were at some sort of level exceeding our expectations, or guys who come out of nowhere, who have been a big part of their team's rotation, of their team's success, all that good stuff. We're gonna try to highlight players that have been surprisingly good this year. Jay, how do you feel about this draft topic?
I like this one a lot. This gives us a chance to kind of rave about some of the guys that we don't typically get to talk about consistently on the podcast. I also think that this is one of those topics where we can give you guys a little bit of an early indication of some of the guys that we're keeping our eye on in this early going of the season, which is dope because, like I said, there's 30 teams in the NBA, and we obviously don't get to all of them, even with the TikTok content, which there will be more of. But this is a great place to start, honestly.
100%. And you know what, Jay? We're going to try and do this, since we're just going to be basically using this time to talk about players, we'll just go back and forth. We'll just you do one, I'll do one, and we'll try to make a team based on that. Sound good?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Let's do it. All right, Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you first. Who was your first pick of this draft?
So the first pick I have to go with, and it's a guy that I was a big fan of coming into this year, is a dude that I thought was going to take a second-year jump. Bilal Coulibaly for the Washington Wizards.
He's definitely on my short list. He was definitely on my short list.
Yeah, definitely a guy who seems to have grown into his wings, like his body as a wing. Plays a shooting guard, plays the 3. He's a guy who I think got a lot of the like Andre Iguodala build kind of tag coming into the NBA if he was able to fill out his body. And I think we've seen a lot more of that so far this season. On the season so far, 17.7 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists, 55% from the field. More importantly to me, 44% from 3 on 4 attempts per game.
He's hitting 2 a game basically, so that's good for him for sure.
So you have to like that because his ability to stretch the floor is going to be important in that backcourt for this team. Defense has always been a good calling card for Bilal in this early going of his young NBA career. Is starting to show a lot more athleticism on both sides of the ball. And he's going to be a player that for Washington, look, a lot of people are not going to tune into Washington games very much this season just because we kind of understand that they're going to be bad this year. But guys like Bilal Coulibaly, and I think also to a lesser degree, Alex Sarr this season are going to be 2 building blocks worth paying attention to because they're 2 guys, especially on the defensive end, that I think if they can cement themselves as real blue chip prospects for this team, Washington can feel comfortable going into, for example, this draft with generational talent like a Cooper Flagg, like a Ace Bailey, like a VJ Excomb, guys of that caliber, where if they can get one more solid wing player, like they're cooking with grease based off of their most draft hauls. So Bilal Coulibaly taking this step so far from year 1 to year 2, you could say you expect it, but this is a bit of a jump that goes to tell me that like he had something deeper in his bag and he's finally starting to grow into it. I'm loving the mid-range game from him as well.
100%. I mean, like, again, he was on my short list. He is someone who I talked about it before the season with the Washington Wizards. We just need to know who is going to be long-term pieces for this team. We know that the team's not going to play well, but who's going to be those guys who are going to move forward if they do get like a Cooper Flagg and all those type of guys? Who's going to be who's going to be a cornerstone piece? And so far this year, Bilal Coulibaly has shown that he could be one of those cornerstone pieces, which is great because that's what you're kind of hoping for this type of season for the Wizards. You're not going to play well, but as long as you could see like some of your draft picks, turning into real NBA players, real starting caliber NBA players going forward, you're going to love to see that. And I think Washington Wizards fans are very happy with what he's shown so far this year. Jay, for my pick, I promise you, I'm gonna try my best this draft not to go draft too many Toronto Raptors, but I will, but I'm gonna try to live myself. But I have to start off with this guy here from the first overall pick. Jay, Grady Dick has been
Yes.
incredible this year, leading all sophomores, all second-year players. This includes Chet, this includes Wemby, in scoring so far this year at 20 points per game, 46% from the field, 35% from three, 90% from the free throw line, multiple 30-point games this year. Grady Dick looks like a completely different player. And what I've been wanting to see from Grady Dick is seeing different looks from how he's been able to score the basketball. He's shown us this year that he can score on all three levels. He's more aggressive. And more importantly, and I don't think people are talking about this enough, even though he's more of a skinny dude, he is showing us that he has the defensive capabilities to stick with other two guards in the league. That's all you can ask for is for someone who's going to play that two guard position, someone who's 6'7", like a Klay Thompson, someone who's going to be able to score when you ask him to, but also, just try and keep up with the other two guards in the league. And he's been doing that. But his offensive game is just going leaps and bounds to stuff that even I couldn't imagine going this year. And I think that obviously he's getting a lot more opportunity with a lot of injuries that the Raptors have. But Grady Dick, 20-point per game score this year, he has to be one of those like surprisingly good players. And it's not even my Toronto bias, guys. Like I promise, he's been absolutely fantastic this year. I love me some that Grady Dick is playing this well.
He was on my short list as well. He was a guy that I think probably has to be in a real conversation for MIP. I'm not usually very big on giving MIP to a second-year player. I think that him and ironically Koulibaly would both be really interesting players for that. They would probably be my two lead guys if we were also including sophomores in that conversation. I tend not to, just because the jump from year one to year two, if you're considered a real elite level player as for coming out of college or coming from overseas as a prospect, we expect that year one is going to be a bit of a struggle because rookies tend to not be super impactful in year one, but in year two, with more understanding of the NBA under their belt, they tend to grow more into their role. But if we're including them in the MIP race, I mean, those two guys have to be like somewhere at the top of the list. And Grady Dick has just been he's provided the floor spacing you guys have desperately needed. And I think that now it just needs to be now we just have to answer the question of like, okay, what does this version of Grady Dick look like with a healthy Scottie Barnes? Now that's the part that we have to really get a better understanding of.
I think that whenever Scottie Barnes gets back, it's probably going to be in about a month or so. But having this spacing, especially with the August spacing he's had for most of his career, he's going to absolutely love this. That's all I'm going to say. He's going to absolutely love having this spacing on the court. Grady Dick, I'm so glad that he's been be able to take the step. Hopefully he could continue this on. Jay, who would be your second pick?
So I have Bilal at the 3 because I think he's more of an Andre Iguodala-ish type. The other guy the first guy that I'm going to add to the backcourt in this one is a guy we talked about earlier on in the podcast with the Golden State Warriors. Buddy Hield is unhinged, dude. The dude is shooting the absolute lights out of the ball, like we mentioned earlier. He's right on par with Stephen Curry as a point in points per game this year. Who thought we would be saying that about him coming on to this team? And don't get me wrong, I think at the end of the day that the situation between the Golden State Warriors and Klay Thompson this offseason was one of the more interesting storylines across the board in terms of guys moving on to new teams. But I also think that the Golden State Warriors got a guy in Buddy Hield who fits more of the mold of exactly what they needed, which is a more spry guy that can put the ball on the floor, put pressure on the rim, and was a little bit more consistent from beyond the arc. And Buddy Hield provides all of that. And by being a secondary shot creator next to Steph, now you bump Andrew Wiggins down to being more of a tertiary offensive initiator. Then you have the Moses Moody's, the Jonathan Kumingas, the Brandon Podziemskis of the world to kind of fill in the blanks. And that makes the Golden State Warriors a much more complete basketball team with Draymond Green anchoring the defense. Buddy Hield has given this team new life and given them a completely different dynamic in that backcourt. And we mentioned it earlier. His rise on this roster has been one of the most eye-opening stories of the early portion of the season and has been a real catalyst to Golden State being as good as they've been so far this year.
100%. I'm not gonna go fully much more to Buddy Hield. We've talked about him a lot in the Warriors topic, but yeah, he's been fantastic. He is definitely someone again I considered for this list. Next pick for myself though, I'm gonna put Grady at the 3. I want to have a bit more flexibility with this one, but for my 2 position, We knew this guy had to step into a big role, but the fact that he's playing this well, I don't think it's talked about enough, and I think I want to show him some love here. Talk about Christian Brown, man. Christian Brown so far this season for the Denver Nuggets, 16 points per game, 5 rebounds on 53% from the field, 46% from 3, 85% from the free throw line. I mean, when you're talking about the two guard position and like the production that you want from that position, especially just since you're missing KCP, Christian Brown is giving you everything you want and more. People were worried about him going into this role and him being able to find his space. Like, is he really going to be that knockdown shooter that we've been waiting for? Is he going to like evolve his game? Yes, he has been. He has been. And in terms of MIP 2, shout out to him. He's on that short list. He's definitely on that short list. I think he's been great for them. I know that there's a lot of like holes in this Denver Nuggets team, especially coming off their bench, but him coming into the starting lineup, he has improved tenfold, but he's also, the starting lineup is not missing a beat because of him too. So he's been a great fit.
Yeah, I mean, just a really good pick, just given the fact that, again, just falls into that category of a dude who just like has taken his game to another level. And I mean, I completely agree. Yeah, that's a good pickup.
100%. Jay, who you got your next one?
I mean, TV got to show off a little bit of Raptors bias, so I'm going to show off a little bit of my Bulls bias here. I'm going to place this guy at the 1, even though he's a 2 guard. Zach LaVine. I mean, let's be honest.
I was thinking about it for this list for sure.
Yeah, this is a guy who last year, a lot of us in the Chicago Bulls community and a lot of people outside of Chicago Bulls fandom were kind of wondering if Zach LaVine was done. His trade value was completely zapped to the point that even the Detroit Pistons weren't sure if they wanted to give us real draft capital for him last season. The lower extremity injuries piling up, potentially zapping his athleticism was obviously a big question, because although he is a big top 3-point shooter, his athleticism, both on and off the ball, is the most dynamic aspect of what makes him so good as an offensive creator at the 2 guard spot. And we had a real question mark as to like whether or not like Zach LaVine was still like a real solid player. Like, I mean, obviously we thought Zach LaVine was still going to be good, but last year was his worst year statistically, granted on a shortened season due to injury. But that early portion of the year, not only was Kobe White outperforming him through that early start to the season, but based off his statistics that he ended with last year before missing the rest of the season, that was his second worst. That was basically his worst. That was his worst statistical performance since his first year in Chicago. So there were real rumblings around like whether or not Zach LaVine was still the all-star caliber guard we had seen the 2 years prior. And although I don't necessarily know if he's all the way back up to that level, he has definitely calmed down a lot of the Bulls' pessimism, because the dude is shooting 46% from 3 right now on volume. Like, gotta love it.
No, for sure. If anything, we talked about how this early part of the season for Zach LaVine is going to be a trial for the rest of the teams. Teams, don't be scared to trade for him. He's still good. He's still real good in this league. I know that the goal for the Bulls is to still trade him, still trade Vucevic. He's worth trading for, guys. I want to see him on a better team, obviously. I want to see him actually part of like playoff basketball this year. And I think now that we've seen the early parts of the season, that he's still like just as efficient as ever, still just as much of a scoring threat as ever. I think more teams are going to be more willing to, dish out some assets in order to get Zach LaVine, which I think that's, at the end of the day, I think that's what Bulls fans want, right? At least like if you're going to be able to trade him, get something back. So I think that's a good direction for both parties, to be completely honest. A great pick there. For myself, Jay, I told you I was going to try and stop with the Raptors thing. I can't with this one. Shout out to the center position, Jakob Poeltl. I don't know if y'all been noticing, but Jakob Poeltl right now is averaging 15 and 11 so far this year. 3 assists per game, underrated passer of the basketball from the center position. 1 block per game. And what's been more important for him, if you watch him, is the screening, the ability to even like, get offensive rebounds, the in-between game, like hitting those floaters. I think Jakob Poeltl this year is showing that he should be in discussion for, borderline top 10 centers in this league. And to be honest, as much as I love him, I'm looking at all these playoff teams who are missing like that centerpiece, who want to have that guy in the middle, go after Jakob Poeltl, man. And it's not even me trying to sell on him because I do want him to stay here to help out the young guys develop, but I want to see him actually be in real basketball games that actually mean more than this because he's been great. I think that so many teams could benefit from Jakob Poeltl, and so far this year he's been showing probably some of the best ball of his career. I think he really needs to be looked at and as seen as one of the most underrated centers in the league.
Yeah, it's interesting to have Jakob Poeltl on this list, given the fact that, a lot of people look at his contract, being a Bulls fan, looking at Nikola Vucevic as well, getting that same $20 million a year. You'd kind of wonder how Raptors fans feel about the fact that he is having a pretty solid season after being so conflicted last year.
100%. No, he's been outperforming that contract tenfold. He's been fantastic.
Yeah, I think unironically, both Bulls fans and Raptors fans were very upset about the $20 million a year for both Jakob Poeltl and Nikola Vucevic, and both of them are kind of playing up to par right now. Both averaging double-doubles, both top 15, top 20, or top 12 in rebounding so far this season as well. I don't know necessarily. I'm not necessarily sure if I want to say they're both outperforming their $20 million a year, but I think they're both are living a little bit more up to their contracts than what we thought they were caliber of based off what we saw last season, which felt like that was a significant overpay for both guys, especially given the context of guys like Kristaps Porzingis and others being kind of in a similar wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, guys, if you guys are looking, especially for playoff contenders who are missing instead of looking to trade, just watch a Raptor game and see how much Jakob Poeltl affects his team. You guys are gonna think that $20 million is a bargain. Just take a look. That's all I'm saying. Just take a look. Jay, who are you gonna have at your next pick?
My next pick, I'm gonna stick with center position like you did. Let me go to my boy Vika Zubac.
He was the other guy. Yeah, it was between him and Poeltl. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think people just forget that Zubac is good because he's been surrounded around legitimate talent pretty much from start to finish. Whether it was when he was on the Lakers in the early Braun year, or it was the time with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, even before that, on the overachieving version of the LA Clippers. He wasn't necessarily the guy that was glaring at the top, given that they had a Montrezl Harrell, a Lou Williams, Pat Bev, Tobias Harris. They had that group that kind of took headlines. Vika Zubac in the pick and roll with James Harden is real damage. And he is averaging 17.1 points per game. He's fourth in rebounding right now at 12.5. Very efficient at 55.9% from the field. And he's just a guy who I think just plays very efficient basketball. And the two-man game with him and James Harden, it might not be as flawless as the once upon a time duo of James Harden and Clint Capella in terms of insane efficiency. But Vika Zubac actually gives similar impact just in a more finesse kind of way. And I think he has a much more open post game. There's a lot that Vika Zubac brings to the table at the center position where I don't think he's going to get a ton of shine on this Clippers team, considering that the expectations for the Clips this year are pretty low, given the trading of Paul George and the fact that Kawhi Leonard is out indefinitely. But Vika Zubac and Norman Powell are two of the very good bright spots of this team alongside James Harden. And I think that this is a guy that needs more recognition, man. I think he's a top 10, top 12 to 15 center in the league who's playing a little bit above his weight at the moment.
100%. I mean, James Harden, if you are a big that can finish inside, James Harden will absolutely get the best out of you. And that's what's happening with Vika Zubac this year. Love to see it, man. 17 and 12 or something so far he's averaging this year. He's been fantastic. He's been absolutely fantastic. Glad to see that he's getting some love on this pod. For my next pick, though, I think I have 2 more picks left. My next one over here, gonna throw it over to Atlanta. Yes, I'm throwing it over to Atlanta. And some guy, I'm definitely playing him out of position, but I did want to shout out this guy. He had a bit of love when he was on the Wizards back in the day, but he is having a great season so far here at Atlanta. Garrison Matthews. He's been a real piece for them off the bench, averaging 11 points per game. 52% from 3 on 6 threes per game, almost 50% from the field. He has been when you talk about, of course, Zachary Ricochet has been solid this year, Jalen Johnson, but the fact that you can have someone off the bench who plays hard defensively and he was shooting the 3-ball at an elite level like Garrison Matthews, we thought that maybe he was a fringe rotation player today, but so far this year, he is a damn solid rotation piece, a good role player for them, and is a reason why would some people say maybe they're like outperforming what people thought that they were going to be so far this year. So I think Gary Garrison Matthews has been a big part of that. So shout out to him.
Yeah, that's just another solid rotation player who's kind of been able to continue to keep himself in the fray. Very, very much Tomas Satoransky vibes from our Chicago Bulls fans in terms of a guy who just can like legitimately ball handle, makes good decisions. Like you just like how he's a good connector, good player who I think is like, providing real value this season.
100%. All right, Jay, your final pick of this draft. Who do you got?
My last guy is on his fourth team in 4 years and seems to have finally found his footing. And a lot of people are giving him a lot more praise now that he's finally stepped into a more solidified role. And that's my boy Jay Huff for Memphis, man.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I think you'll probably it'll be interesting to see what name you had in mind. But I'm going with Jay Huff from Memphis, averaging 10 points in 15 minutes off the bench, shooting 53% on nearly 4 attempts from beyond the arc. He's just providing real value for a Memphis Grizzlies team that like just seems to always find a dude, bro. Like it's funny, you were talking about the Milwaukee Bucks earlier and their inability to like truly scout solid talent in the draft. Memphis seems to stumble upon these guys, whether it's in the draft, unrestricted free agency, off the scrap heap. Memphis just takes guys, puts them in the fray, and makes them like solid players out the game.
Yeah.
Like these are just another dude in the rotation of guys over the last 3 to 4 seasons in this Memphis hub, so to speak, that has come in and just been able to provide real value out the gate. Jay Huff is starting at the 5-man position, 4-5-man position, gives them a completely different dynamic, gives them real shooting at the big man spot, which obviously we know Jaren Jackson is pretty inconsistent. And outside of that, they are not really too many high-level three-point shooters on the entire Memphis roster, to be honest with you, right? So he just gives them something else. He is Memphis's like Dean Wade, so to speak, right? He kind of operates within that threshold of like being this off the bench stretch 4, stretch 5 guy who gives you a different level of spacing where you now have to respect him. But if you respect him too much, now you have a cutting, slashing, driving Ja Morant. And that's not the kind of pick your poison you want to be having to choose between. So shout out to Jay Huff, man. Like I said, 10 points in 15 minutes a game off the bench. I mean, efficient scorer comes in and just does what he needs to do.
Bro, I mean, like, you could pick a couple of guys on Memphis team for this type of draft. I mean, shout out to Santi Aldama having a great year. Like, Jake Laravia is actually a pretty good defender coming off the bench for them as well. So, like, shout out to them. I mean, yeah, we talked about the Bucks and the ability to draft. Memphis seems to pull out of guys out of thin air all the time. So, yeah, shout out to them. And Jay Huff, shout out to him. He was a two-way guy to start the season. Now he's turned to a standard contract. He absolutely earned that. So, great pick with him. For my final pick, though, I'm gonna go with someone who's giving me like weird, like real Jamal Crawford, like Lou Williams vibes so far this year. I knew that he was gonna be a good piece for this team, but man, he's even exceeded my expectations. Shout out to Trey Mann, man.
Yeah,
Shout out to Trey.
That's a good pick too for this one. Yeah, I like that one.
Trey Mann of the Charlotte Hornets, 16 points a game, 40% shooting from 3, 46% from the field. This man is just giving them that spark plug off the bench. They were missing that with like once they traded away Terry Rozier, and now they basically got that like replacement in Trey Mann like right away. He's had a fantastic year. There's some games where he's actually just like ending games with them. But yeah, he's had some massive games. He had a 27-point game right before Halloween, a 23-point game as well. Struggled the last couple of games, but he's been awesome this year. I think he's gonna be like one of those guys who is gonna be in like low-key 6-man of the year talks. And yeah, great year so far for him. So shout out to Trey Mann.
Yeah, definitely needed a defensive shot generator. Didn't know it was going to be Trey Mann.
Yes, did not think it was going to be Trey Mann, but here we are. And he's been absolutely fantastic to start the year. But yeah, those are our drafts. Is there any guys like quick shout outs before we move on to the next part?
I mean, we had a couple of my shortlist guys kind of pop up. One of the guys that didn't get drafted that probably would have been my next pick off the board would definitely have been Cam Thomas. That would have for sure been the guy. Top 15 in scoring so far this year. I mean, we kind of expected him to be a heater given the fact that he kind of is unhinged with no Mikal Bridges and the fact that they got their draft picks back. So they're kind of, although they're, playing high-level basketball right now, this is a Brooklyn Nets team that's going to end up offloading and trying to go for that top pick sometime later on the year. In the early going of the year, Cam Thomas so far, nearly 25 points per game. Got to be happy with it.
Yeah, 100%. And I was going to go somewhere along those lines, too. Another 25-point per game scorer, Norman Powell. Yeah. I mean, he talked about addition by subtraction by getting rid of PG. He probably means addition by him because he's averaging 53% from the field, 48% from three. Raptor fans know that how good of a player he's been coming off our bench all those years, but him as a number one option is kind of ridiculous right now. Again, almost 50% from three on 8 attempts per game. Ridiculous. He's been absolutely fantastic to start off the year for the Clippers, and he's clearly the number one option so far without Kawhi Leonard, and he's been fantastic. So shout out to Norman Powell as well. Jay, in terms of your team, who do you got as your team for most surprising this year?
So for my most surprising team so far during the 2024 season, I have at the 1, Zach LaVine, at the 2, Buddy Hield, at the 3, Bilal Coulibaly, at the 4, Jay Huff, and then at the 5, Ivica Zubac.
Great guys to mention over here. For myself, I got Trey Mann at the 1, Christian Brown at the 2, Grady Dick at the 3. I'm just going to slot Garrison Matthews at the 4. Who cares? And then at the 5, I'm going to go with Jakob Poeltl. Let us know down below what you guys think of these two teams. Are there any guys that we're missing that you got that we didn't discuss in this section of the show? Let us know down below. Jay, time for the final segment of the show, and it's time for the quiz. And today's quiz, we're gonna keep it straightforward. Sabonis has been absolutely on fire with the triple doubles this year. He actually had a perfect triple double this past game versus the Raptors. 100% from the field, 100% from the free throw line, no turnovers, and a triple double. Great for him. But Jay, I'm gonna need you to name me the 10 players with the most triple doubles who are under 30 right now in the NBA.
Under 30 is a good caveat. Holy.
Yeah, under 30.
So that's got to be like Luka.
Luka's number 2 at 77.
LaMelo.
LaMelo is at number 10 at 10 triple doubles in his career.
Nice. Is Tyrese there?
Tyrese is not on this list.
Okay. I figured the rebounds are going to kill him. So that's probably the part where, okay. Under 30. Dang, how old is Jokic?
He's on this list. He's 29.
Oh, he is? He's 29. Okay, I was going to say.
He's 29.
He's Jokic, the guy I was a little worried would be like just over. So him being just under actually works out. Cool.
Yeah, you lucky his birthday is in December because he has 134 right now.
Clutch. Okay. Who else comes to mind? That's like, man. Who else comes to mind that even is like in the is Ja here maybe?
Ja Morant at number 8 with 12.
Okay. So it doesn't have to necessarily be like a high number for this. So like Lonzo.
Not Lonzo, no.
Okay. Josh Giddey?
Josh Giddey at number 9 with 11. So you got the bottom 3 and the top 2.
Okay. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
Let's think. Let's think. Okay, see, actually, no. Friend of the show, Ben Simmons has to be on the list somehow.
Number 5 at 33. Yeah. Remember, Pepperidge Farm remembers prime Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you respect him for who he is, or at least for who he was, that's still an elite player that was in there at one point. Who else is in that like category? Under 30 is such an interesting caveat. Who else even fall? Trae Young, maybe? Nah, rebounds would probably kill him.
Nope, not Trae Young.
What about like DeJounte?
DeJounte Murray at number 6 with 19.
Ooh. Why do I have a weird feeling there's like an insanely like obscure name somewhere on this list? Is there, or like is everybody kind of seeing?
I will say, you talk about friend of the show. This guy's definitely a friend of the show.
Oh God, Julius Randle.
Julius Randle at number 7 with 14.
Now that's hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. Oh man.
So you got the bottom 6. You're missing number 3 and 4.
Huh.
You might not think these guys are under 30.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's a good thing to take into consideration, is whether or not they're like actually. Oh, huh. That makes things a little bit more tricky though, because if they're closer than I'm giving them credit, then what? Who gets boards? I think that's my problem. I'm thinking of guys who can pass, but like, who gets boards?
You're missing the guy that I think I mentioned off the top. Why I decided to do this quiz.
I mean, you said DeMontis, right?
Yeah, but he's on this list. He's number 3.
Yeah.
He's number 3 though. Yeah, no, that's one of the guys missing. He's number 3 with 61.
So what about like Giannis?
And he's the final guy on this list, number 4 with 45.
Okay. How old is Giannis, by the way?
He's turning 30 in like 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay. Talk about clutching up. Him and Jokic were clutch as it gets.
Yeah, even Sabonis. He was like, his birthday is like in January. So he's.
What the heck?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm like, damn, these guys just make the cutoff, which is crazy. But yeah, that is the list. Most triple doubles for guys currently under the age of 30 years old. Yeah, Nikola Jokic. This guy's gonna easily break the record, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, this season alone, he unironically might be contending for his teammate Brody's triple-double record, honestly, at this rate in terms of triple-doubles in a season, because, like, they're going to need every single...
I was going to say, like, Brody knows that, you know, his team needed all of his triple-doubles. Jokic, as of right now, his team needs all of his triple-doubles right now. But let us know what you guys think of this quiz. Let us know down below what other quiz you want to see. But yeah, this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. Jay, what do you tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Yeah, man. So now that we have kind of built a real rhythm with the NBA Daily Picks Challenge, you can expect some more unique content coming in terms of reacting to more news. I'm going to have a little bit more of like a rant session because there are things that we don't necessarily get to in the podcast that I do have opinions on. One of them being the Philadelphia 76ers overconfidence in their roster was one of them I kind of briefly mentioned in this podcast.
Yeah.
But there are things of that nature, as well as just, you know, breaking news that tends to pop up throughout the day and throughout the weeks of the NBA that we want to kind of start being a little bit more like first to the well with. We love being able to, you know, talk our stuff on a podcast, but initial reactions also are always a really good way to not only, like, you know, digest NBA content, but also formulate your opinion throughout the NBA season. So definitely a lot more breaking news-esque kind of content in terms of reacting to different things around the league. And yeah, like, I think that as we continue to go throughout the year, there's going to be more things that we kind of dabble into. You can definitely expect more like for real or facade kind of episodes. These are the ones that tend to streamline pretty well for me in TV in terms of kind of like getting our opinions back and forth. Yeah, I mean, so far so good in terms of basketball season. I think that my Chicago Bulls have played above their weight so far, even though I still want them to be a lottery team.
Yeah, it's another great episode. There's a lot of things we have coming up. I mean, to be fair, I mean, you said your Bulls are punching above their weight. I think the Raptors are technically punching above their weight, keeping in all these close games. But yeah, like, it's been a great year so far. Lots of content coming out for you. Remember to check it out. Check us out on the TikTok, Instagram for the daily stuff, YouTube, podcast networks. You'll find Hit Your Free Throws podcasts anywhere, and of course, our individual links down below. But yeah, this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out.